to, I guess, the second item. So right now, let's move that up, and that way we can get the sheriff out of here catching bad guys. So, unless you think you need to stay in the room, that means we're okay. So, Sheriff, why don't you come up and tell us what you want to do with Enterprise?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think we know, but go ahead.
I think you know as well. I've
Yeah.
got Seth Brown with Enterprise with me, also Lieutenant Hughes, my fleet manager, and as you all know, I've been working on this. We've been working on this for several months now, and I believe we came up with a really good plan of how to move forward and start leasing vehicles for the sheriff's office. I'll let Seth introduce himself and kind of give you an update of where we're at. And if you have any questions, obviously the three of us are here.
Well, it's nice to meet you all in person. So I've worked with Hendricks County on the original account for now about 2.5 years. So now they had made the introduction into the sheriff's office, and we started having the conversations on what it would look like to bring sheriff underneath that same program and doing the same thing. And that's where we're at today, is getting the blessing and making sure that it makes sense for the county, it makes sense to everybody in this room, that way we can move forward and start to revolve the sheriff's vehicles a little bit quicker, keep them in a healthier condition on the road, costing less money overall over the lifetime of the vehicles.
Great.
So we have already ordered the 17 vehicles for this year, and Lieutenant Hughes is going through the minute details of the equipment and making sure that we get the outfitters and those kinds of things put together. We're getting that ironed out right now, and so we should have a really good plan moving forward. So.
Very good. Any comments from?
Who does the equipment? Who installs the equipment?
Yeah, so we're looking at
Move Over Outfitters is, so we've gotten estimates from several different outfitters. Historically, we've, for the past 40 years at least, we've been building the vehicles in-house. That doesn't work anymore. Our department's grown, and especially with leased vehicles, we want to get them on the road. We don't want to be paying lease payments while we're waiting 6 months for them to be built one at a time. So we needed to update how we did that, and this works right into it. We found the best place at a good price, and they can get the vehicles out at a reasonable amount of time. We're overall satisfied, but like the sheriff said, there's a lot of details with this. Just on Friday, we found out that the emitters that change the traffic lights as we go through the towns, the supplier has discontinued that specific thing. So just yesterday, I came in to talk to the new supplier and got all the information on that. So it's always evolving, but we're real close on numbers.
So we're looking at a company that is going to be able to get the vehicles in, get them fully outfitted into us in a very short order.
Correct. It's a bigger outfit than what most garages are from an emergency standpoint. Most are a couple technicians. Move Over is there in Lafayette. They have, I think, 6 to 8 technicians, and they're able to do it more of a production style, so it's quicker. But we do have a network of vendors across the state that we can use, depending on timing and depending on price, for whatever makes sense for the sheriff's department.
Very good.
Before the end of the lease period, that equipment has to be removed.
It does.
And that equipment belongs to the county at the end of the day.
Right.
So that's regardless of where that vehicle stands. The sheriff's department can take that and reutilize the equipment if it's able to. And if not, dispose as proper.
So, I guess logistically, those vehicles will be out of service when the equipment's being removed. Will there be an overlap then with new vehicles coming in? So will you always have the same number of vehicles available on the road? That's what.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so we have a system, and it may evolve actually as these leases come in, but most of the items are going to be installed. Vehicles will be basically ready for patrol when they arrive. Just a few minor details. We're talking about swapping printers, connecting we call it Rocket. That's basically the camera system and all the Wi-Fi and all that to the deputy's specific computer. We have to do that. So we have a little bit to do, but it's not like we're going to be waiting 2 weeks to transfer items from one vehicle to the next. The goal is, as we get these 17 vehicles in, we will then strip all of the vehicles that we currently have that we've just replaced. We'll have those to strip. We'll reuse what we can, and then that's pretty much how we're going to go forward, because I'll have an inventory, and then we'll determine what we need to upgrade for the Durango from the Charger that we've been using.
So I think essentially what you're asking is if we bring in the car, they're going to order a new leased vehicle for us. It will go to the outfitters. We'll have someone in-house remove the equipment, give it to the outfitter so that they can put it in a new vehicle, and then that vehicle will be sold. We are still going to keep full cars that we own. So if a deputy has an opportunity that they've got to work, they need a vehicle, we're still going to have vehicles on the lot.
So, but there will be an overlap.
I think there will be time, yes, that there's a new vehicle ordered before the vehicle is actually sold. Is that what you mean?
Well, I'm thinking about the vehicles that are, lease period is ended, or about to end, we're removing the equipment, we've got new vehicles coming in, time needed to install the equipment. So I'm thinking the lease on the new vehicles is going to have to begin before the lease on the existing vehicles ends.
No, so the way that we'll do it, and the reason Enterprise wants to handle the upfitting up front, so, paying the vendors, is until that vehicle is actually delivered to the sheriff's department, we're not going to activate billing.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah, in a perfect world, old one will be decommissioned. That's when we're starting the new one, so there won't be any overlap from a billing standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions from anybody? Yes, Dave?
There's only one big concern I have about this whole thing, and I'm all in. But I know how corporate America can be, and it's out of all of our control. We enter into this, it's a long-range plan. It's a partnership. My big concern is if Enterprise decides to jump out of this, I hope that we have enough lead time so we can react. Because my concern is Enterprise says, okay, we're in this, we're a partnership, and you guys decide we're pulling out of this because you can do this, because this is a separate beast dealing with this kind of beast. This is a different kind of beast. You guys know that. We have to be reactionary to this because we're being reactionary to it now because of the cost of these vehicles. I just hope you give us that amount of time.
Yes, and I will tell you, I've never seen us, willingly want to leave a partnership, regardless of the type of vehicles. We work with police departments and fire departments and sheriff's departments across the state and the country. So we've gotten well-versed in emergency response vehicles. So you're not going to have to worry about Enterprise going anywhere. And from a contractual obligation standpoint, let's just say it's more likely that the sheriff's department, would like to leave the partnership. If that happens, the only contractual obligation is the individual quotes themselves on the vehicles.
We will find you.
We're right over there on West Washington. We're going to get it right.
We will find you.
But no, and this is, obviously we've worked with the county for several years, and that is very, big to us.
And I would think Enterprise would want that as well, because there is things that change. I understand markets can change. Whoever you are partnering with, whether it's General Motors, Chrysler, or whoever that is. Stellantis, whoever. You don't know who it's going to be in the future.
And we're agnostic to that, so we're always going to present what financially makes the most sense, and then ultimately the sheriff's department will get the decision on what vehicles to go with there.
It might be autonomous.
We'll see if that day comes.
Okay.
It'll be slow in Indiana.
He first came into my office, that was some of the first things that I just started grilling on. And we spent a long time talking about what if we need to get out, what does a private business do? If they go out of business and they have all of these leased vehicles, how do they get out of that? And Enterprise actually comes in and the vehicles that they can make a profit on, which with ours will be virtually all of them. They will take those as we need to take them, they'll sell them, and then the same equation on the reduced book value, subtracted from the selling price, that same equation, we get that money back that we could put towards new cars. So it's a
That'll
very
help.
stable plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think you all know, I initially was not for leasing, and obviously you had some heartburn because I had some misconceptions on what it would look like. When we looked at, a 2-year plan, I couldn't see it. But having said, broaden our view of what it was gonna look like over the next 10 years and what that financial savings would be, it definitely made sense to me, and I believe what I shared with you was the same. So I think this is a good move in the right direction, and overall keeps the fleet updated, as I said, but also saves the county taxpayer money.
And you'll be a civilian too, Jack.
Someday.
And we'll find you too.
Someday.
And ultimately, our goal is to help control the cost there
That's
in the
it.
sheriff's.
I think that's it. And keep us in a quality rotation and such.
Correct.
It's a better plan than what I ever thought of. So I think it's a job well done, so look forward to it.
So,
I'm assuming the county would continue to insure the vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I did speak on that. There's really no difference between the leasing and, in the insurance world, necessarily the leasing and the purchasing of the vehicle. The vehicle still needs to have insurance. I didn't see an issue there.
Paula, you have a question?
I actually have 2 questions. Nice to meet you, by the way. So you're going to have lease payments in 2025, correct? 26. So we'll need to make sure we get those for the annual fiscal report, like I already get from you for those. Now, current existing vehicles that we currently own, how to dispose of, I need to know how we're going to dispose of them for capital assets. Can we work with Mr. Larson on that, because we need to remove those out of the capital assets that we currently track for the county?
Yes, I provide Colonel Larson with the vehicles as they're sold, so he maintains the asset list. I update it, so yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not missing on those 2 things, because
Right.
those are things that we put on the annual fiscal report, and they're also for the how we track it.
Every vehicle we account.
And budgetarily, we were allotted more money than we're going to spend this year, so I'll come and ask for that to be encumbered.
That's the department, is tracking assets.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack, you may want to share that number with her, what you shared, what you guys are doing with that cost, because it's, what you have appropriated, I think, is a lot less, or is more, and you're spending less.
Yeah, I think we're approved, I think we're at 502,000 and.
370?
I don't think we're, at the bottom yet, but we're around 370 in the leasing this year, so.
Very good. Any other questions? So the commissioners have approved this at our meeting, last meeting, or whenever it was,
I believe you executed the contract or the leasing.
and
agreement.
I've signed it already. So do we need to do that again in this meeting? Okay, how about council? I'll move it over to Larry.
On the council, we do not need to take action because
Okay.
it's funds that have already been authorized for
Okay.
this year's budget
All right.
for them to expend.
Okay.
So we do not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say to the 3 of you, you're welcome to stay for our whole meeting if you want. If you want to leave, go over there to that table and make sure you get a plate and a piece of cake so you can take it with you. And compliments of Mr. Hessen. He makes it, so,
What kind of cake is it today, Larry?
pardon?
What kind of cake is it?
I'm sorry?
Cake today?
Oh,
What kind of-
pistachio.
Pistachio. All right. Thank you. Thanks, you bet. All right. We will move to
I'm going to bring the same kind of cake.
item
Thursday
3, I
morning.
guess I'll call it.
What is that?
Open enrollment debrief.
Debrief. Yes, thank you all for having us here today. I just want to take a few minutes to kind of go over open enrollment. We were able to have open enrollment meetings that were successful and well attended. We did implement and roll out the new vendor, Lively, for your FSA, HSA, your COBRA, and your direct billing. We did have a little bit of challenges as it relates to the COBRA and the sheriff's pension. As such, we went back to Lively and requested a 1 month credit to the county to make up for those challenges that we had to face. Erin and her team were fabulous with just answering all the questions. As you know, with change comes a lot of questions, and I feel as though we were able to get all of those HSA, FSA questions answered. So just wanted to touch base and let you know that that is forthcoming. I will get that dollar amount over to Paula as soon as I have it, but it should be on the March invoice.
Very good.
Huh?
Renewal summary, I guess? Is that
Yeah.
where we are?
That is where we are. So when we're looking at this, you're going to see in the blue is your preliminary, and that's what we came out with first and what was first offered. So your admin, so your UMR, TPA was at a 1.4%, which represents a 4.6K in an increase. The final was a negative 0.4 with a negative $1.2 thousand. Okay? Your stop loss stayed the same from preliminary to final, and there was a slight adjustment in your maximum liability, going from 0.07 to 0.06, with your maximum liability going to 51,000 to 46 negative. A lot of your admin costs did change because we did take the COBRA and the direct billing out of UMR, so that's why you're seeing that. We did remain with QBE, and I did want to just, last time we were all together, Eric said that, hey, I'd like to see how would that play out if we waited another month to see whether or not we would have won, right? And so when we look at the claims data that came in the subsequent months, we did have an additional $201,000 claim that came in, along with a $5,000 claim for preemies, which could have been looking at a $2 million claim, right? So when we're looking at all of that, the likelihood that we would have beat the QBE is not high. So I think making that decision to renew with that contract when we did in September was the right move, because we would have seen not only QBE, but the other markets would have raised their offers as well, given the new claims data. Any questions on that?
You said 5,000.
500,000, sorry, yeah, sorry.
That's a
500, yeah.
Yeah.
500,000 versus the 2 million, yes, correct.
Was it what do you call it, a NICU?
NICU premium, yeah, premature. Mhm. All right, moving along to the next.
Keep going. Thank you.
Yep, we are going to just take a look really briefly at your dental. Dental did go up slightly, but that is because we decided to, based on employee feedback, we did add adult ortho. Your vision stayed the same. However, we were able to increase your allowances from 130 to 150, and then we were able to extend your rate guarantee through 12/31 of 2028. There's that.
Okay.
MetLife stayed the same. Everything was in a rate increase or rate hold. Those plans are up for renewal 12/31/2026. So we will be going out to RFP for them this year. So next time we meet, we'll have updated numbers for those. And then your AFLAC remain the same, unchanged for your critical illness, accident, and hospital indemnity.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to go into any questions on the renewal review before I move on to the financial summary?
Anybody? Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. So when we look at your total, this is your total cost. You had, for total premiums collected between the employer and the employees, you had $9,327,494. Total plan cost was $6,340,571. So it left you roughly at a surplus of roughly $3 million for the plan year, which is good.
I have a question about that. That does not include the administrative cost, right?
It does. The total plan cost is included.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll kind of take a deeper dive into that. Nancy, that's a great segue to my next slide. So when we're looking at this, I won't read every box to you for the sake of time, but when we look at this, we're looking at the ones that are kind of highlighted, and it looks like kind of a dark brown. It's yellow on my slide, but it might be a yellow in your handout. But you see the medical spend, and then you see your RX spend, then you're going to see your fixed cost. That's where your admin costs will come in, Nancy, to get you the total cost of that $6,340, $571, and then you got your premium, get you back to that. So you're looking at an 80-20 split between 82-18 for your medical and your RX, which is really where we want to see it in that 80-20 split. So we're doing well. When we look at last year compared to this year, we're a little bit down on medical spend, higher on pharmacy spend, slightly. Shrevin's here. He's going to talk a little bit about that because we are continuing to see an uptick in the specialty and brand name drugs. So we're going to talk about how we want to address that for you in 2026, going forward in 2027. But just wanted you to be able to have a snapshot of the financials year over year. Any questions?
So when you have on here the word expected, is that projected?
Yeah, so this year expected, so that's what we set your premium equivalence to, is what we're expected versus like a maximum, which would be your corridor plus 25% or a midway point. So because of your reserves, we just go to expected.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions, anybody on that? Okay, please. go
The
ahead.
next page just kind of breaks down how your plans are running. We like to look at this because this gives us an opportunity to say, okay, the PPO plan is running at a deficit. Do we need to think about rearranging how that plan design looks as we go into plan modeling, which is another one of our strategies for 2027? So do we want to look at that? And it clearly shows that your HDH plan is running very well. So just kind of giving you an insight by plan.
All right.
Before we move on, financial summary and get into the clinical review, any questions?
We're talking about drugs later, right?
We are. Yep. We have a whole
All right.
section for that. I'll let you take it over from here.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Good to see you all again. I will be going through your clinical review. Shrevin will be going through more of the pharmacy spend, so this will be more just focused on more medical. As a heads up, we did move our analytics platform. We were originally in 2 platforms across our book of business, and now we are in 1. So these pages will look a little different for you guys because it's different visuals, but in my personal opinion, it helps me tell the story a little bit better. So I was relieved when we moved all into one analytics platform. So this top page, page 12, just takes a look at your member enrollment across 2025, showing you month by month how that looks. So starting the year off with 987 members, ending the year with 994. You can see to the right that distribution across the U.S. Of course, majority are going to be in Indiana. We see other states involved when dependents, maybe in college or something like that, are on the plan, but they're residing in a different state. And then at the bottom, you can see gender split, which is split pretty evenly, 51% female and 48.9% male. I know we've talked about in years past, but the big reason I point that out is typically women will be a little more proactive with their health care, taking more preventative care screenings. Obviously, in childbearing years, they're seen at the doctor a little more often than men are. We see a little more reactive population when we're looking at males, so we like to make sure that's looked at. Then down at the bottom, we can see about 30.2% of your members are 0 to 17. The reason I point that out is typically when you have just a higher percentage in that lower age category, we may have more of a healthier risk on the plan, which is always good. And then down below that, you'll see for ages 46 to 65, about 27.8% of individuals in that age range. So that increases likelihood of some more chronic conditions as we get older. Just something to keep in mind when we have that age bracket as the next highest on your plan. And then last thing on this page down on the bottom right, you can see HDHP plan is accounting for about 65.5% of your enrollment, and then PPO is about 34.5%. Next page, this is actually one of my favorites. I think it really highlights your guys' medical and RX spend over the last 3 years really well. It divides it by month on this bar graph and line graph down at the bottom. You can see as you look at these bar graphs, typically your spend will increase by the end of the year. Oftentimes people getting surgeries if they're hitting their deductibles or wanting to hit their deductibles before the end of the year, but also some aggregate payments may come out during that end of the year time, which is what happened for you guys. So as you can see in the red bar graph, that's for the year 2025. Those last 3 months are where you saw that higher spend. That was related to a couple long-term hospital admissions. That was related to one of your NICU claims. There was a NICU that was about 2 months, and that was the $500,000 that Katie alluded to earlier. And that was paid out in November for that NICU stay. So that's why you see that elevated increase there. And then lastly, in December, there was a prolonged ICU admission as well. And so they were in the ICU almost 2 months, and then as well as a few specialty medications fell around at the same time in December, so all paid out around at the same time. Any questions on this page at all?
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so this next page takes a look at your claims by relationship, so employee, spouse, dependents. Sometimes on this page we may see more of a spend related to spouses due to the employee carrying the insurance since they're not able to work themselves. It was a little different for you guys this last year because you guys had 2 dependents that were pretty sick. So that NICU admission, of course, and then we did have a cancer diagnosis. So between that, you'll see down, if you go over to plan paid and look at child in 2024 and then 2025 spend, it was a pretty big jump, and it was related to just those 2 dependents. Now, those will not be ongoing costs in 2026. They are acute things that happened in 2025, but that's where that big increase came from. We'll go to the next page. So this takes a look at your guys' medical claims paid over 2025. I want to point out the percentages that you see for the annual change at the bottom. I have correct numbers for that. For some reason, that did not pull correctly. So instead of a drop of 17%, that's actually a drop of 4.9% of your claims from 2024 to 2025 for your medical spend. Just wanted to make sure everyone had the correct numbers for that. But the next page will dive into the specifics of where we saw increase of spend, decrease of spend related to different diagnoses. So page 16, this is your medical claims incurred in 2025 based off of ICD chapter. So just think of that as a broad category of different diagnoses. So up at the top, that category, certain conditions originating in the perinatal period. This is relating to NICU or newborn admissions into the hospital. So like we've already talked about, that attributed to a large portion of your guys' spend. Number 2, this is actually a category we like to see increase. So this did increase for you guys because it means people are being preventative with their health care. They're getting their immunizations, they're getting any type of scans that they need. A large portion of your guys' spend was related to a preventative surgery for someone that had a genetic susceptibility to a certain type of cancer. So they got a surgery done to hopefully avoid a diagnosis and treatment related to that. So that's good that we like to see that preventative approach to healthcare. Third most costly, you guys had a bit of a baby boom, 9 deliveries in 2025, so there was a slight increase in that. Number 4, I did want to point out to you guys diseases of the musculoskeletal system. So this is going to include anything from osteoarthritis, knee replacements, hip replacements, spinal concerns, low back pain. Anything falling into those categories falls into this line here. So you guys did see a slight decrease in spend, but it is still in your top 5 categories for your medical spend. This could be something that if you were interested, there are a lot of different musculoskeletal therapies that are coming out where There are virtual physical therapy options that sometimes help people to avoid surgery or delay surgery. Programs like ATI, Hinge, and SWORD, maybe names you've heard of, they're a little newer, but that's something we can always explore if you're interested in offering that to your population, just so that you're aware. That can be helpful with decreasing your musculoskeletal surgery spend. And then last of the top 5, neoplasms, just a fancy word for cancer. Large majority of this was related to the cancer diagnosis and the dependent I spoke of earlier, but also some removal of benign tumors, benign cysts, so just to be aware of with that. But that did decrease as well, even though it's in your top 5, from 19% of your medical spend to 9%, so 10% drop, which is wonderful. Any other questions? There's a lot of information on this page, so I always focus on the top 5, but are there any other categories you have questions on this page?
Anyone have questions on anything on this page?
Okay.
Guess not.
I'll take it.
Go right ahead.
All right, so page 17, we're now pivoting and looking at your ER claims. So this takes a look at what was paid each month over 2025. So you can see to the left, it lays out the numbers by plan paid and that amount. But then to the right, you can see the amount of visits to the ER. Oftentimes, we will see an increase in the summertime. A little more car accidents. Kids are at sports camps getting more fractures and running around. So we may see that uptick. And for you guys in August, we did see kind of a higher visit count for the ER. On the next page, I think what's really helpful when we're looking at this is we can identify frequent flyers. If there are any individuals who are using the ER as their primary care, we can see that here. So I typically pay attention and really note when someone hits 4 or more ER visits in a year. Once we hit 4, I'm wondering if there's something else going on that maybe they're not going to a primary care provider for. Now, I will say for you guys, that wasn't necessarily the case. Your top 4 individuals here that we're seeing 5 times and 6 times in the year were all pretty warranted reasons, I would say. A lot of chest pain, a lot of complicated pregnancies that if you know your wife has been pregnant, anytime they call the OB and there's something that's really concerning, they often advise them to go to the ER just to be on the safe side. So that was a number of the claims that we saw. And then lastly was a baby that had pneumonia, which definitely I think warrants an ER visit to make sure they're taken care of in those early few weeks. But we did see your guys' uptick in ER visits, so we'll talk about what the Wellness Center as well as what we have available for education to make sure people are going to the ER, they're going to the urgent care in those appropriate times. So we'll speak of that in a moment.
So these numbers are typical or not?
I would say they're pretty typical. Thankfully, you don't have anyone that is far and away using the ER like too much, I would say. I think especially these top 4 individuals, they were all acute things like the pregnancy concerns and things like that. There's no one that's coming in with chronic pain and getting any type of medication in the ER for chronic pain and things like that. So I think as far as this year and when I'm looking at your data, I'm not concerned from anyone using it over time for something they shouldn't be. Great question.
Are you overlapping that by chance with the clinic?
So actually, great question. The clinic data right now is not in our analytics system. We're working on getting that in the analytics system this year. So when I do this next year, we'll have it integrated. But that is a grain of salt to take with this, is it does not have any of the wellness center information. But keep in mind, if they were seeing it at HRH ER, that's going to be accounted for here. It's just the wellness center stuff we don't account for as we get to your preventive care exams and stuff in a moment.
Okay.
Great question.
Good question.
Okay. So next page, very similar looking, just different data looking at your urgent care claims. And what's nice is that the next page then shows you a nice side-by-side comparison for your ER claims versus your urgent care. visit. So like I said, this is where I emphasize that education. I did reach out to HRH just to see what education they were already providing in their clinic to people of when they should be going to the ER versus the urgent care. I know they include a flyer in anybody's new patient welcome packet, but they do also have a flyer hanging up in all of their wellness centers of when to go to each place. They said that they're more than happy to provide that if you guys want to put it anywhere else in the building. We also at Apex Benefits have an ER versus urgent care flyer, so if you guys want to have that available as well, we can. I think the biggest thing to be aware of with ER versus urgent care utilization is education is going to be really key, because if I'm in the moment having an emergency, I'm going to go to the ER probably unless I've thought about it ahead of time. So I think that education can be really helpful.
That's something we've also talked about with UMR on our phone calls and their customer service, and making sure, because I brought this up a while back to UMR and Apex and said, do we have people who are using the ER? Are they using it more as a primary care? So that's why they drilled down into this. But they've also got now a flyer with UMR with their customer service where they're talking, when they're talking to our employees and telling them, hey, these are the places you kind of want to route and go to. So they're trying to also educate them on their phone calls.
Any other questions on this page, page 20, as we're looking at these numbers?
Go right ahead.
Next page here, this is your preventive care compliance. So this is taking a look at different cancer screenings, diabetes screenings, and making sure people are staying on a good regimen and staying on top of those chronic conditions. So again, as we pointed out earlier, this is not including HRH data. So I would take that top right box with a grain of salt with that preventive care and those outside provider physicals and things like that. But the rest of this data, the cancer screening compliance is very positive. So this is looking at people, they will account for if someone has gotten like a colonoscopy in the last 3 years in a certain age range. They account for that. So you guys can see that between your breast cancer screening, cervical cancer, and colorectal cancer and prostate, all of those screenings did increase in being compliant with what is advised between last year to this year, which is good. I will say, I think what is also really helpful is for the new wellness program that's in place for this year. Preventive screenings are a part of what people can earn points for, so I think that also helps them to be more cognizant and incentivized to go and get that care. So just something to keep in mind with that as we're moving forward. And then down at the bottom, again, diabetes screening. This is something I'm following also with HRH, as I know we have the GLAD program in place, and they do a lot of monitoring through the clinic as well. So I think this data will look different next year when that is integrated all together within our system.
Good.
Okay.
That's very important, and that's good. That's going to be
Yes.
combined together or at least correlated.
Yes. Yeah, I
So,
agree. I
good.
agree.
Yeah, because that'll help with figuring out other problems.
Mhm.
And that's
Yep.
good.
Yeah, that's been a big priority for our analytics team,
Okay.
merging those for all of our
Good.
clients, so, yes. All right, and then this last page, page 22, this takes a look at your chronic conditions just based off of the medical spend. The biggest thing that I point out on this page is just because something is more costly on your plan, it doesn't mean that it's affecting a ton of your members. It's the most prevalent thing among your members. So you can see cancer, that was more of a cost on your plan, but that's related to a smaller amount of people, versus if you look at line 4, mental health, that's a little more prevalent in your population, but it's a lower cost to your plan because of the medications that people can get to help with those different mental health concerns is not as costly as like a cancer medication. So this is just a helpful visual on this page for you to see that and compare. A lot of people will voice concern when they see their mental health prevalence on the plan, which I understand. As a good employer, you're worried and concerned about your people's mental health. I think a big thing to note here is that if you're seeing that mental health prevalence, that means those people are being seen and they're voicing their concern of their anxiety or depression or anything else like that. So even though we don't like that being prevalent on your plan, they are getting the help that they need by being seen by a provider and being in the claims in this way. So just, that's something I always point out to encourage you that that's a good education piece. And then lastly, page 23, this is an high overview of your clinical report. So every month I go into your medical and RX claims and identify any individual that's hit $10,000 or more in spend for a given month. And I will note what's going on, whether it's a new diagnosis, new medication, maybe it was just a one and done knee replacement surgery. But I will go through and then assign a risk score to your plan based off of what I see in the claims. So low risk things that are going to be one and done. Medium risk, anyone that depending on their treatment plan, I could potentially see increased spend due to what they're being diagnosed with, or it may go the other way, so I'm keeping an eye on it. Or high risk is going to be ongoing pharmacy spend, cancer diagnoses, any chronic conditions that will be going over a long period of time, at least until the end of your plan year. I'll assign a high risk to those. Of note for your high risk, a majority of that was related to high cost medications, which Trevin will be going into. 9 of the 12 were actually high cost medications, and then the other 3 were related to cancer diagnosis, a pretty bad infection that led to sepsis, and then a claimant that has since turned off of the plan, so that will not be ongoing. But just so you're aware, when I do that clinical analysis, we're looking at 61.6% of your spend on the plan just by me doing that type of report. So it helps us to keep an eye on what's going on with your plan. The one other thing I wanted to mention at the end of my portion on these slides is, I know I brought up our second opinion program. So this is something that me and another nurse on our team at Apex Benefits runs, and it has 2 different parts. So if you look in the back of your presentation, there's a loose leaf paper that gives you a high level view of what this program is, what the investment is. One part of the program is of no cost to you, and one part of the program, whether you choose to give it to your members or not, is a slight cost to you. So the first one that is not of any cost, this is going to be our community MD Anderson cancer program, where basically we can just assist with providing a referral for anyone who has a cancer diagnosis to the community health network that is certified through MD Anderson, which MD Anderson is a leading institution in cancer research and treatment located in Texas. But we now have that certification at Community Health here in Indianapolis. This has been a really helpful program for a lot of my clients personally, because unfortunately oncologists are getting more and more booked out over months at a time, and people aren't able to be seen as quickly as they would like to. For instance, I had a patient a number of years ago who had a growth that needed to be biopsied. They were not going to be able to get seen by their healthcare provider for 2 months, which is a long time to go if you are not getting answers. And so when I referred them to MD Anderson, they have a guarantee of at least making contact with that patient and seeing them within 48 hours. So that person that went from a 2-month waiting period to basically 3 days before they were getting a biopsy and then told very good news that it was not cancerous was huge. So this is a really helpful program, I think, to have in place. Again, there is no fee for this program. Anytime that maybe someone comes to HR, or if you have a flyer out that people know, hey, if you get any type of cancer diagnosis, you can reach out to the nurses at Apex Benefits if you would like a second opinion. At Community Health, we can provide that referral and just be an extra touch base for that individual, someone that holds their hand through that process. But I have heard nothing but great things about this program for our patient experiences. The other portion of the Second Opinion program is a partnership that we have with the Mayo Clinic, which I'm sure a lot of you know of, but located over in Minnesota. We found that a lot of people were experiencing like diagnostic odysseys. Maybe they were going to the doctor and couldn't figure out what was going on with them, or maybe they felt like a treatment they were receiving was not really taking care of the root issue that they were experiencing. They reached out to us and wanted a second opinion with the Mayo Clinic. This is where cost can kind of come in, and it's weighing that cost versus benefit. So for an individual, if they call me and I deem them appropriate to be getting a second opinion at the Mayo Clinic, that would be $1,600 just for that individual to have their records reviewed by a team of doctors at the Mayo Clinic. The doctors will then provide a recommendation of whether they think that person would benefit from coming up to the Mayo Clinic and getting any type of further treatment or evaluation, or if they agree with that person's treatment that's at home and they don't think they need to continue, they agree with what they're receiving, which sometimes people can be like, oh, well, that's not really helpful, but I would argue that some people, that gives them a lot of peace of mind that if their records went to someone at the Mayo Clinic and they agree with what they're getting, that can give that patient a lot of peace of mind for $1,600. And then lastly, if they do recommend that person go to the Mayo Clinic to be either further seen or evaluated, that is something that the client would pay for their travel to the Mayo Clinic and a support person to go with that patient to support them. I will tell you the Mayo Clinic does an amazing job of connecting people's care back home. They do not typically keep them in-house or anything like that, but it just helps them to provide a helpful treatment plan. So just wanted to give you guys a high-level overview of that. Are there any questions on that program at all?
So these, in the box to the far right,
Yeah.
down at the bottom, where
Yep.
it says Apex referrals,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the number then of individuals referred.
Correct.
How does that break down in the middle box then, where there's a fee attached to it? Were all of those referrals, like the first one, 15 individuals referred to Apex for a second opinion,
Mhm.
was that the 88% free opinion
So
on the left, or were any of those in the middle box?
yes, so the far left box is an overall view of the Mayo Complex Care Program as a whole. So it's not just Apex, that's just overall anyone who was referred to Mayo. 88% of those people who got a second opinion had a refined or changed diagnosis. So that's not just us, that's not just those 15 individuals.
Okay.
The middle box just highlights what a client's investment is were they to offer both programs, specifically more that Mayo Clinic program that has more of a cost to it versus the MD Anderson program that has no cost to it. So that just breaks down that fee for you. Is that helpful?
Do any of our people utilize that second box?
No. So this
No.
is something, this is a program you guys don't currently
Okay.
offer. We would have you sign a contract if this, you would want to offer either or both of these programs to your members. So any of the numbers I'm showing you are across the rest of our book of business who, if they offer this program that we have referred to.
Okay. Any, Aaron, or,
I'm just seeing it today, I apologize. I think I would like to talk to HRA because they also work with the Mayo Clinic.
correct,
And I want to make sure if they're already doing that,
yes,
then I would hate to.
all right. Yeah, so might be good to have that discussion.
Yes. I
All
think
right.
That would be a great.
All right, very good, great. Any questions from
I got
anybody?
one.
Yeah, Dave?
Yep.
Back on 23, your high claimants, or
Yes.
about 8% of the total that's on the plan is costing about 62% of all of our project, or total spend.
81 individuals.
I'm assuming probably the two of those, if they were probably not part of this, that would have been lowered quite a bit.
Probably, yeah. So
and those
that
are
top NICU claim was about
Yeah.
500,000, And then the next individual, I can pull it up here, but
Probably an
was pretty
oncologist.
close. I think it was actually the individual that was admitted for 2 months for the high-risk pregnancy that then delivered that NICU baby.
All right, so
Yeah.
that's a real
Yes.
unusual, which the stop loss would have hit that one.
Correct.
Okay, so if we, that skews the whole thing right there
Yeah.
dramatically.
Yeah.
That's just what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Typically, we see less than 5 people are costing the majority of the plan.
Yes.
So that's normal across our book of business, which is why we focus so highly on what can we do with those largest claimants. Is there an opportunity to intervene? But that is normal across the book.
So I'm just going to assume, could we be subject to a higher stop loss possibly coming this summer?
I don't think, I wouldn't equate the two.
Okay.
Because those are one and done cases.
Okay.
And because they're not
It's still not pending?
ongoing.
Okay.
I
All right.
wouldn't jump to that yet.
Okay, good enough, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll go to Shraven. Is that right?
Just, still on page 23, I'm
Okay.
assuming that those figures do not include the clinic, the wellness clinic
Correct.
expenditures?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. This is going to be more of the things that were
Major.
going to the hospitals, surgeries, admissions, things like that.
Right.
Much bigger spend than typically we'd see at a wellness center. Yeah, great
Okay.
question.
Good. Shraven and pharmacy,
Break
or
for food before he goes.
break for food.
That way you guys can get it.
Eric is hungry.
I
We're all
know how this
hungry.
normally goes.
All right, all right. We're going to take a break for food, get food. We can come back. And I assume if you folks speak quickly, we'll move ahead. All right. Thanks.
Denny, I gotta go.
Okay. Okay. Pardon?
If you guys aren't busy, maybe March 17th, maybe meeting with HRA to do our year review from the previous year.
Okay.
And then we can talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll get the information.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And actually, I think HRH, they used to have a connection with
You want to have your,
community in the Anderson as well. And I don't know if that's still there, so that could be both. And that was going through my mind as I was listening to her talk. It's like, are you talking about our connection with HRH or not?
Something different, yeah.
Yeah,
Same thing.
yeah, okay,
I don't know how much it costs now.
good. And you're not just a dumb farmer.
Oh, I don't know about
Stop
that.
saying that.
I just like people to think that, Denny.
I know that.
Some of them are like,
Shraven, why don't you move us into the pharmacy review?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So as a quick refresher in terms of who your PBM is, you guys are with TrueRx, and you guys have been with TrueRx for the past few years. So today what we're going to be looking at is your 2025 plan year, and then we're going to compare that with 2024. So this is an executive summary of how your plan has performed in 2025 versus 2024. The first row that you see, the gross cost, that is plan plus member pay. And all of these numbers that you're seeing here are pre-rebates. So we haven't factored in rebates because we do get that a little bit later in the year. So that's just something to keep in mind. So when we look at your gross cost, it's increased 18.4%. We're sitting at about a little less than $1.5 million, about 1.48, compared to last year, which was $1.2 million. And then when we look at the plan cost specifically, that has gone up 19.3%. We're sitting at about $1.3 million compared to the 1.1 that we were in 2024. And when we look at what's driving these numbers, there are three main categories. So we got our anti-inflammatory products. So we are Humira, Stelara, Skyrizi. Then we got oncology treatment. On your plan, there's one oncology drug that's hitting your plan, which is driving a lot of that spend. And then we got diabetes medications. That's something that we've seen throughout our book of business. Diabetes and anti-inflammatory, those are always our biggest cost drivers. Then what I'd like to bring your attention to is the specialty cost, which is up 20%. We're sitting at about $734,000 compared to the $611,000 that we were in 2024. And the specialty medication accounts for about 49.3% of your total gross cost. And about 3% of your total population is using specialty drugs. So we have about, I would say, 7 to 8 members that are driving a majority of that specialty spend. And then the last row we have here is the specialty biosimilar substitution rate, which has increased a lot compared to 2024. What that basically means that out of all the claims that have a biosimilar available, how many of those have been transferred to the biosimilar? Because the biosimilars tend to be cheaper than our brand products. So about 42.3% of the claims that have biosimilars.
Shraven, when you say biosimilar,
Generic.
our word would be generics, right?
Right, right.
For the most part.
Yeah. When we think about small molecule drugs,
okay.
They are exactly the same molecule, so that's why we could use branded generics. But with our biological drugs, there's always this slight difference, so we can't call them generics, so that's why we call them a biosimilar. Okay. But an easy way to think about it is basically a generic for an expensive biologic brand.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that biosimilar substitution rate is doing well, and that's because TrueRx is very quick at adopting the biosimilars that come out. So any questions on the numbers we just went over?
Going to continue to rise. That's going to happen.
So on the percent of change, is some of that price increases by the pharmaceutical company on the drugs themselves, or is it also utilization?
A little bit of both, and I have an entire slide dedicated to just what those trend drivers are.
All right.
So we'll deep a little bit deeper into that.
Okay.
So here we're going to be looking at your plan cost PMPM. So we've done it quarter over quarter. Then we also have the entire plan year as well.
Okay.
So, and we have here gross PMPM and the net PMPM. The net PMPM is going to be after those rebates are accounted for. So right now, when we look at our 2025 gross PMPM, we're sitting at about $112. When we compare that to our book of business, our book of business gross cost PMPM is $144. So you guys are sitting well below that benchmark. We don't have the net PMPM for 2025 because we're still waiting on Q3 and Q4 rebates. But in 2024, your net cost was $70, PMPM, and when we compare that to our book of business, net cost PMPM is 101. So even with the net cost, you guys are sitting well below our benchmark.
You're not taking into account all the prescriptions that the HRH clinics give out, right?
Right, those are not factored into this. These are just the ones that are going through TrueRx. So based on the trend we've seen in 2024 and what we've been looking at in 2025, we expect that your net cost or net plan cost PMPM will be lower than what our book of business is. So here's when we're going to go into what those trend drivers are. And when we look at what the main trend drivers, we're mainly thinking about three things. One is going to be the drug mix, then we have AWP inflation, and then we have utilization. So when we think about drug mix and drug channel, it's the kind of drugs that are hitting your plan, right? Are they specialty, non-specialty? Are they brand generic? Are they 30-day or 90-day supply? So it's kind of the mix of drugs that are hitting your plan. Then we have AWP inflation, which goes off of the question you asked earlier. Is that based on the price increase by manufacturers? So that's what we account in the AWP inflation. Manufacturers change their prices twice a year, once in January and the other in June or July. So that's when we typically see the inflation go up a little bit. And then the prices also increase when new generics come out or new biosimilars come out. The brand products, they increase their price. So we see an inflation based on those things as well. So when we look at your utilization, about 4% of your gross cost increase was due to AWP inflation. And then we have utilization, which is basically how many of your members are utilizing your plan, and the claims volumes. So when we look at your overall gross trend, it's increase of 13.6%. And drug channel is driving about 9.3% of that. AWP inflation is driving 4% of that. And in terms of utilization, we haven't seen much change. It's a decrease of 0.1%. So let's look at the utilization a little bit in detail. Again, like I said, the utilization hasn't changed much. You had a decrease of 0.1%. Membership did increase about 4.2%, but the membership is basically the amount of members that are on your plan, not necessarily the ones that are using pharmacy benefits. Your utilizers or your patients are going to be the ones that are actually using a pharmacy benefit. So we had an increase of 1.6%. And when we look at your claims volume overall, it was a slight decrease of 0.8%. So not much changed when we look at our utilization. Most of our cost is because of the drugs that are hitting the plan and the AWP inflation. So that's what we're going to look at next, AWP inflation. So like I said, manufacturers increase their prices twice a year, January and July. And then inflation also increases when we have generics or biosimilars come out. And when we look at what categories experience the most inflation based on your utilization, we have oncology agents that had about a 3% increase. Diabetes medication had about 1.5%, and our inflammatory class had the highest inflation at 5.2%. And that's mainly because we're seeing a lot of those biosimilars come out in that anti-inflammatory space. So we see manufacturers inflating their brand price. Now let's look at your drug mix or your drug channel utilization. The first thing that I want to go over is our generic dispensing rate, or GDR, which basically means that out of all of the claims that have been dispensed on your plan, how many of those claims are generic? So 84.4% of all of the claims that were dispensed were generic. We tend to look for anything that is around 85%, and that's because not every brand drug has a generic available, and if that's the case, then the brand would be dispensed. And that's what we see with a lot of our GLP-1s, Mounjaro, Ozempic. They don't have a generic available, but we do see a lot of utilizations for those GLP-1s. So that's why we see that generic dispensing rate a little bit lower. Then specialty cost, like I said.
Question.
Yes.
When are some of those going to come off patent? You know?
Ozempic, I want to say, is looking at 2030. So it's still 4 or 5 years down the line. And then Mounjaro, that's going to be, sometime in 2035, 2040. So we do have some GLP-1s that have came out with their generics, but they're not as widely used as our Ozempic or Mounjaro. Trulicity or Victoza is one that came out with a generic, but it's not as effective as our Ozempic and Mounjaro. You have to take it every day, versus these you have to take once a week. So we just don't see a lot of utilization for the generic that has came out.
Is the pill cheaper than the injection?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, the starting dose is cheaper for the pill, but when we look at the maintenance dose, it's the same as the injection.
Thanks.
So GDR, 84.4%. It's a little bit decreased from last year by 0.1. Specialty cost is 49.3% of your overall gross cost, and we did see about a 19.74 increase in that. And then we also saw an 18% increase in your non-specialty costs as well.
We are watching also with the GLP-1s with the new pill that's coming out to see if we see an increase in utilization for the people who were scared to do the injections. And now you guys don't cover it for weight loss, so you only cover it for certain indications. But that is something that we are actively watching and monitoring it, because we do believe that utilization will increase as a result of that pill form that is out in the marketplace. So just something kind of be on the lookout for. We're watching it, but just so you guys are aware of it.
Yeah, it was with the intention that it might reduce utilization, but now all the members or all the people who are afraid of using injections, they have an option of using the pill form. So depending on how it goes, we might see an increase in utilization, but like Amber said, you guys don't cover it for weight loss, so we don't expect any dramatic rises. Some of the categories that saw the most increase to your PMPM trend is oncology, diabetes, and mental health. And then we had the biggest decrease in growth hormone agents, about a 3.4% decrease. So now here we're gonna look at your therapy classes. What are your biggest cost drivers? What has changed? Anti-inflammatory is still our #1 cost driver, which is costing about $332,000 a year. This is a 10.5% increase in this category compared to last year. And what's driving this is one member using Skyrizi. Unfortunately, we don't have a biosimilar for Skyrizi yet. So we would expect this member to still drive the anti-inflammatory space. Oncology, it did increase from 3rd place last year to 2nd place this year, 105% increase, costing about $223,000. And this is mainly because you have a medication called Zejula, which is used to treat ovarian cancer. In 2024, this was still on your plan, but it wasn't filled for the entire year because the member started, I believe, in Q3 or Q4. So we only had a few fills in 2024, but in 2025, the member filled for the entire year, so that's why we're seeing an increased cost in that oncology space. Diabetes, there's also a 22% increase, mainly because of Mounjaro utilization. And this is something that we've seen across our book of business throughout all of the channels that we have. Diabetes is increasing just because of these GLP-1s. And then mental health also saw a 103% increase. And that's mainly because we have a brand Wellbutrin and a brand Vraylar on the plan. There is a generic for Wellbutrin, but this member cannot use the generic. They have, provided proper documentations of why they can't, so they have to be on the brand. And the other drug, Vraylar, this is for schizophrenia, psychosis. And even if there are cheaper drugs out there, if a member is stable on this drug, we don't want to disrupt their therapy because it could cause more harm. So we do have a few categories that we call narrow therapeutic drugs that even though there may be a cheaper option, if the member is stable, we won't like to disrupt them. So even though these are increases, they are for a valid reason. It's not like they're just using expensive drugs. So any questions on the therapy classes that we just went over?
Questions from anybody?
Right. Now let's look at the drugs that are the top 10 drugs. So like I said, the cancer drug, Zejula, is your number one spend, 106% increase, and that's mainly because we saw the full year filled in 2025 versus 2024. Skyrizi, Entyvio, and Humira, which are on your top 10, all of these fall into that anti-inflammatory space. But the thing that I want to bring your attention to is the Humira spend, which was your fourth highest spend in 2024, but that has dropped by 40%, and that's mainly because members are switching to that biosimilar. So we see that in August of 2025, your Humira utilizer switched to the biosimilar, which produced a lot of savings. And then we also have a biosimilar for Stelara, but that's not hitting your plan, so that's nothing to be concerned about. But that Skyrizi member, I would expect them, if they're still on your plan, then I would expect them to always be in your top 10 for now. Any questions on any of the top 10 drugs that we went over? All right. So here we're going to look at your high-cost patients in terms of pharmacy. We have about 7 members who had an RX cost over $50,000 in 2025, and they accounted for about 42.7% of your gross cost. So these 7 members are driving the majority of your spend. So now this is basically some of the work that we did for you in 2025. We did a market check in 2025 for the current 2026 plan year. And what a market check is we basically go to your current PBM and tell them to reprice your claims based on what the utilization has been in the past. So TrueRx offers 2 formularies. One's a universal formulary and one's an exclusive formulary. Right now, you guys are on the universal formulary. So when we did the market check, we evaluated both formularies, and then we also evaluated the disruption. So going over the results of the market check, there was a savings potential anywhere from 17.78% to 24.5%, depending on which formulary we selected. And in terms of dollar amount, that equates to anywhere from $208,000 to $287,000. You guys made a decision not to change formularies, just stay on the universal formularies. And that also produced $208,000 in savings without any disruption. So we still have a little bit of juice to squeeze if we had changed the formulary, but despite changing formularies, we did produce a lot of savings, about $208,000, which in my opinion is a big win, especially because there was no disruption. This is basically your rebate history, quarter over quarter, what you have been receiving for the past 3 years from 2023. Not much to say besides, just showing that you guys are receiving rebates. It is 100% pass-through, meaning all the rebates that TrueRx gets, they will pass it on to you. And then these are some of the things that we are evaluating as we move forward in this plan year. So you guys currently have RX help centers that helps members with copay assistance and things like that. We have ElectRx, that is our international sourcing option. And then we have also the GLAD program with the clinic. So currently, we're evaluating all 3 of these options to see if they still make sense. Because a lot of the work that RX Help Center does and ElectRx does, TrueRx also has programs in-house which kind of do similar options or similar things. So what we're going to do is basically we're going to look at what your price is for the drugs that are hitting RX Help Centers and ElectRx, and we're going to compare that with if those drugs flowed through the TrueRx program, what would be the price? We'll factor in all the fees that RX Help Center and ElectRx charges. We'll factor in the fees TrueRx charges, and basically give you a whole number or savings potential to see, if having these still implemented still makes sense. And we'll do the same with the GLAD program because we did notice that there were some drugs that were a little bit higher through the clinic versus had they gone through TrueRx. So we'll take a look at that because right now, all of the drugs that flow through these programs, we don't get rebates on it. So we do want to factor, how much savings we're going to get from rebates. Sometimes the fees also don't make sense, so we'll take a look at that as well.
They do get rebates for the clinic.
They do get rebates for the
Yeah,
clinic?
yeah.
Okay. So in that case, when we do the clinic evaluation, we'll factor in the rebates that the clinic is generating versus what would TrueRx get. So any questions on some of the things that we have mapped out for this year?
Questions from anybody?
All right.
Nope.
So this is kind of our roadmap in terms of timing of when we will do certain things. So the first thing is annual reconciliation. I don't believe you guys have had an annual reconciliation in the past, but since you are on the innovative contract for 2026, we'll do an annual reconciliation in 2027 for the 2026 plan year. And what that basically means is that in your TrueRx contracts, you have guarantees for rates, you have guarantees for dispensing fees, and you have guarantees for rebates. So when the 2026 plan year ends, we'll do an independent analysis to see if TrueRx actually met those guarantees. And if they didn't meet those guarantees, we'll go back and try to see if we could get that money back based on what your contract terms and conditions were. So that's sometime, you can expect that in Q3, Q4 of 2027 because we do have to wait for all the rebates to be paid out. So just something to keep in mind. Then we did a market check in 2025 for the 2026 plan year. We're going to do another market check in 2026 for the 2027 plan year. This is something that we'll do on a yearly basis just because the market is changing so much. Biosimilars coming out, so we want to make sure we have the most market competitive rates year after year. And we do, even though you are in a 3-year contract with TrueRx, we do have annual market check rights. So we could perform annual market checks every year, despite the 3-year contract. RFP, we haven't planned one yet because we're doing a market check. We'll see how the 2026 plan year goes. If we experience any issues, if you guys are unhappy with TrueRx, then we could look at an RFP. But if everything is going well, we could continue to do market checks because when we do an RFP, there is a potential to move PBMs, which could cause disruption and things. But if we're still able to produce significant savings just by staying with TrueRx, we could just look at that. But that doesn't mean an RFP is off the table. That is always something that we keep in our back pocket to see if we could run an RFP. But we mainly use that, if there are significant changes in the market or if you're experiencing any issues with the PBM. Then the next couple things here are just compliance things that you guys as plan sponsors have to submit or report to the government. But our PBM partners take or do majority of the heavy lifting for you guys in terms of those reportings. So every year we look at 2 reportings. One's the CAA compliance, which basically we have to send, or the PBMs have to send pricing information to the government to make sure they're offering transparent pricing and things like that. And the other one is the gag clause attestation, which basically means that the contracts that the PBMs have with their pharmacies don't have any gag clause, which prevent the pharmacies from disclosing prices and things like that. The CAA compliance normally happens in June. We did one in June 2025. TrueRx will do one in June of 2026 as well. And the gag clause attestation happens at the end of the year. We did one in 2025, so we'll do one in 2026 as well at the end of the year. So those were all the things I had in terms of drugs and pharmacy. Any questions, concerns?
Anything we didn't touch on that you want to touch on?
Heads are shaking no.
All right.
We don't have any questions.
I've got one, and I don't hardly know how to ask this question. I'll just throw it out. With these PBMs, and Governor Braun's been working on some PBM discussions, is there going to be any kind of contractual agreements in the future that can be shorter than longer? Because you just said there's like a 3-year contractual agreement. Are these PBMs going to be able to do shorter ones instead of longer ones? Because what I see happening is we get committed into a 3-year contract. With the drugs, you just mentioned a minute ago, there's patents on these things. You got to be very cognizant of what could be coming up. You're listing all this stuff. we need to probably know what some of the patents on some of the main drugs that we're utilizing in the future and when they're gonna come off of that. Because we may not want to get tied in too strong in a long-term relationship with a PBM if their generics are going to be possibly coming out. So for an example, some of those drugs that we're having a lot of utilization with a particular drug, and there's potential of that coming off, do we really want to get connected to somebody for 3 years when we may want to do something for 1 year?
Right.
to-
No, that's a
to
great
get at
question
something?
because, so to answer that question, yes, we could do 1-year agreements. And even though when I say we have a 3-year contract with TrueRx, we have a 90-day out after the first year. So they're essentially 1-year contracts, but they give us 3-year rates. So at any point, you know, if you guys are unhappy with TrueRx, we could leave them after, well, you guys have been with them for a while now. So with a 90-day notice, you have an out in the contract. So you're not tied in for 3 years. Going off of your other question of when, you know, these generics are coming out and things like that, we review them on a monthly basis in terms of what is coming out, what is going off patent and things like that. And we work with our PBM partners to see how they're managing their formularies, you know, when are they gonna place that generic or a low-cost brand on their formulary, and not even when it's gonna be available on their formulary, we also look at how it's placed. Is it a preferred product over the high-cost brand? Is it at parity? Is it at a lower preferred? So we look at all of those things, and TrueRx does a really good job at keeping up with all of the drugs that are coming out in the market compared to like the other PBMs that we've seen, especially the big three, CVS, Express Scripts, Optum. TrueRx and these mid-level PBMs, they're very quick at adopting biosimilars, for example. Even today, one of the big three PBMs are saying that the Stelara biosimilar is having supply issues, but all of the other mid-level PBMs that we work with have taken brand Stelara off of their formulary and only have the biosimilar. TrueRx is one of those. So in terms of the PBM partners that we select, they are pretty nimble in terms of, you know, what drugs are coming out and pretty quick to adopt to newer strategies.
And Dave, we do have, if you will, a timeline that shows when these drugs are going to, like when Skyrizi's off patent, when Manjora is. So I can provide that for distribution to this committee.
And then we also have our new to market drug webinars on a quarterly basis, which just goes over all of the newer drugs that have came out and what our recommendations are in terms of they should be excluded from formulary, included, covered, or whatnot. We look at the clinical efficacy in terms of its competitors. We look at its pricing, and then we kind of make a recommendation of, you know, should we really cover this, or is there another option that is better, low cost, things like that.
So, based on his question, on David's question that he asked, and you're looking at this, you said monthly, we may not have another meeting till the next quarter, whatever, but you may see something that would really benefit us before then, that we could even say, let's give the 90-day notice, so that we're not missing out on time, just because of time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the first thing we'd do is we'd work with the PBM to see what their solution is. And a great example of this I could give is when Humira biosimilars came out.
Okay.
Not every PBM, like when the Humira biosimilar comes out, they can't automatically switch to that biosimilar like our generic drugs.
Okay.
The pharmacy could just switch it at point of sale. But for our biosimilars, the provider needs to send a new prescription and things like that. Mm-hmm. So we actually worked with TrueRx to actively shift all of our Humira utilizers to the biosimilars. So TrueRx reached out to their providers, provided education on why the biosimilar is better. They reached out to the member and did the same, and basically made sure all the parties understand of why they're making these switches.
Okay.
So that is something that we definitely keep our eye on.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
If something major like that were to happen, we'd call Aaron, we'd be like, hey, we need to get in front of you guys to alert you that something drastic is happening in the marketplace and that we think we need to make a change all cycle.
Good. Thank you. Great. Okay.
I have a question, just kind of general knowledge, how much influence do you think the massive on-air advertisements do? All those names you named are all bombarded on TV, every commercial.
A lot, because
People ask for them, or are the doctors, this is the greatest thing out there?
I'm really glad that you asked that question, and you may have heard Skyrizi commercials a lot, because AbbVie is the manufacturer of Skyrizi, and they're also the manufacturer of Humira. Now, Skyrizi treats a lot of the same conditions that Humira does, but Humira has a cheaper alternative. 3 years ago, there were Humira commercials everywhere, but now there's Skyrizi, because AbbVie wants everyone to switch to Skyrizi and not even go on Humira. Because if they go on Humira, then we can shift them to the biosimilar. But if they go directly to Skyrizi, it's really hard for them, a Skyrizi member, to try Humira or even convince the doctor to go from Skyrizi to Humira. So yes, those drug commercials are very effective. And not only that, they send their army of sales reps to all the doctors. Doctors are swamped with paperwork that they have to do.
Yeah.
So what they care about is this going to reduce paperwork for me? If they have to fill out less questions on the prior authorization form, then Skyrizi is what the member is going to get. So we also look into that. That's why we try to partner with PBMs that are adopting this biosimilar first strategy. And a little spoiler alert with TrueRx, they're kind of doing a biosimilar first strategy in the sense that if someone is prescribed Skyrizi, they will make them try the biosimilar first, and if that fails, then they'll go to Skyrizi. So that's going to help us curb that spend on people just jumping to Skyrizi.
I have a second question, which may not be appropriate, I'm not sure, but I'll ask it. Do doctors get a kickback?
Get incentives.
Yes. I wouldn't say kickbacks, but
Yeah, I'm
they
sure
do
that's
get
not bad.
speaking
Get a
fees
vacation
at
or
their
two out of the
conferences.
deal.
There's actually a website, I forget what it is, but if you go on there, it shows like what manufacturer is paying what doctor for what speaking fee and things like that. So yes, some doctors get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak at a manufacturer's conference. So
You
those
know
things
why?
do happen, but not as obviously as
Yeah,
other
it's
things.
not.
It used to be worse, I will tell you, it actually used to be worse. There's legislation around for kind of what they can and they can't do now, but they figured out, just like with everything, they figured out a way around it. So these are the new ways to get around it so that they can.
Speaking fees.
Yeah.
So Nancy, Lilly stock was about $75 10 years ago. It's over 1,000 now. There's a reason.
Yes.
Those TV ads are a major component in the price of the
I
drug.
don't think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Fine.
A lot of time, money, and resources go into making
Let me
those
look
drugs
real quick.
with all the happy people.
We just have a couple more.
But if you guys have no other questions on pharmacies, or if you think about any other questions, just shoot me an email and we'll get that taken care of.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Okay, we will round this out with the 2026
Yeah, go ahead.
strategy. Let me get here. All right, as Shervin spoke about, we want to do an overall pharmacy program evaluation. That's your TrueRx, your RX Help Centers, your ElectRx, just to make sure we're still having the right products in place based on your particular utilization and spend. We are in the process of undergoing the clinical pharmacy spend, just to make sure, hey, how would they be if they ran through TrueRx, and making sure that we're getting the right pricing there. And then the other thing that we've noticed is an uptick in your GLAD program spend every month, so we want to take a look at that. All of that data will come back to us at the June 9th meeting, along with plan modeling and the ancillary RFP that I discussed at the beginning of the meeting. The second opinion program with MD Anderson and Mayo, we're going to push that because we have the annual review with HRH later in this month. So just kind of see how their program compares to what we have to offer.
Yeah.
And then just want to kind of talk to you a little bit about, as we progress in the year, how the wellness program year one is going. And then explore some virtual MSK solutions as we continue to see that be an uptick in claims. So I want to make sure we're addressing that if there's any programs we can put in place to mitigate those. Is there anything that we haven't talked about in this that you want Apex to be focused on in 2026 going into 2027.
Anything from anybody? Heads are moving back and forth this way.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then I just wanted to just take a quick minute to, if you want to look at the top portion of this section, you're going to see that there's the UHC. The prior year is year 2024. The current year is 2025. Just to show just a snapshot of how UHC's network discounts are performing at a 50.1%, and your direct contract with HRH is running at a 58.6%. You will see that these are slightly lower than the 2024 numbers, and when I took a deeper dive into it, it's mainly because you did have one individual who went to a facility that was not as big of a discount. So either that's the St. Francis or St. Vincent's of that nature.
Okay.
So that's kind of skewing those numbers a little bit there. But wanted you to see, I mean, really overall, and then what's really important is what's going on. I mean, to me, you're still getting great discounts, right? Anything above 50%. And then your out-of-network utilization is very low, which is what we want to see. So good on that front. I think it's always great that we check to make sure how our network's performing, right? And are we getting the best bang for your members for their buck? Okay. We did have stewardship on here. We were a little bit concerned and able to do it justice, not knowing how long the sheriffs would take. We did omit it from this actual presentation today, but we will add it to the next agenda so that it can have its proper time and from there. But any items that you want us to take away other than the ones that we have?
Anything else from anybody here or anybody back there?
The only other question that I have that I would like to hear from you guys on is the amount of information that we covered today. We're trying to make the best use of our time with you guys. So we want to make sure, are we sharing enough information? Too much information? Is there anything that you would like to see us present differently to you guys? We want to make sure that it's a value and it's a large spend that you guys are all responsible for. So we want you to be able to understand what's happening, but also, want to make sure that you're feeling the value for what you're seeing put in front of you.
In my view, the reason you didn't get very many questions is because you've either trained us or what over the last 2 or 3 years that we now know have a pattern.
Yep.
And I personally thought that all of you were very well, your knowledge and knowing and you studying your material so you could deliver it. That's my impression today.
Okay.
All right.
So
Thank you for your time.
Enjoy the quiet.
We just want to make sure this is for you guys. That we geek out on all of this stuff, but doesn't mean everybody else does. So.
Well, overall, we want the employees of the county health to improve. Not that we do not want to spend money on them to help them with their health care, but if we can improve their health and reduce our expense, that's the goal. And that way, both sides win. And I think it's moving in the right direction. Some people are more compliant than others. That's human nature. And, it happens. So anything else from the council? Any other items?
Well, this is a little, not directly involved, but thinking about a couple of things. There's a county in the southern part of the state, Perry County, that excluded some of its elected office holders from their health insurance. And one of the arguments was that if those office holders were included, that the cost would be so great that the county would be bordering on bankruptcy. And I realize Hendricks County is very fortunate fiscally for a lot of reasons. And I don't know, there's got to be some some kind of response to that. I just can't imagine that argument that bankruptcy is so close to that county by adding office holders. I don't know, have you run into that in other counties?
We have, and, some counties cover elected officials, some don't. Each county has a specific decision that they make for their county. So I would say there's not a one-size-fits-all. I am aware of legislation that has been presented by Perry County, because they want, I think, to be able to say you don't have to, versus that it's not a choice. Can you have, one or two people who can drastically change the overall spend of your healthcare? The answer is yes. I mean, when we look at even what we saw today, right? You have 5 to 6 people who are driving the highest portion of your overall healthcare spend. What I would say, and obviously, Hendricks County, I will tell you, is a unique county because of the way that you run your benefits, the way that you run your program from a fiscal responsibility. You're not in the same position, I would say, that they may, and I don't know, right? I don't do their benefits, so I can't speak or for them in any way, shape, or form. But you have to make sure that you have a long-term strategy set up to be able to sustain those potential, large years where you're going to have some larger claims, and then the years where you're going to have lower claims. I've been in this industry for 30 years now. It's cyclical. You're going to have 2, really bad years, and then you're going to have 3 to 4 good years, and you're going to have 2 to 3 bad years. I mean, it's a roller coaster that I've seen for 30 years. So it's about creating that stability so that you can control those ebbs and flows when they do happen. And I think it may just be a situation where they haven't been able to do that. Again, I don't know their specifics. Could it be a significant financial impact for them? It could.
The other thing that I've had folks from a couple of different counties tell me about their situation, council members.
Yep.
Where the commissioners decide what's going to be offered, what the employees are going to have to pay and so forth, and then they just tell the council, here's what you have to come up with to pay for it.
Yep.
Which seems to me to be short-sighted and not good government. Is that something that you run into very often?
Yes, we do. Absolutely. Not always does everybody see eye to eye. Most of the times because they don't have groups like this who get together and meet together to say, okay, we're trying to create a plan that benefits our participants, but also is fiscally responsible for the people that we serve. Many clients that we work with, we always recommend putting a benefits committee together because we think that transparency and that sharing of information creates a better atmosphere. We do it with a lot of employer groups who have unions. And so when it's the same kind of thing, when you have a union who is, I want all these benefits, but then you have the employer who is saying, well, I can't afford to pay you this, I can't afford to, it's that same thing where we try to bring the employer and the union together to share that information because there is power in knowledge of understanding really what's impacting everything, which is why we try to explain everything so that you guys do understand it, which is why I asked if we explain it too much or ad nauseum. So do we see that? Absolutely. We see it in the private sector the same as you deal with unions too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else from anybody? We thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody, but we're a team, all of us. So good meeting. Commissioner, anything else? I guess we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of cake there.
And thanks for lunch. Yes, thanks for lunch, Larry. Thank you for the cake, Larry. This Larry, not this Larry. No. But each of you can take credit. How's that?
Wouldn't want to eat bad cakes.
So do I push that?